Salt is the core component of cooking. It brings your dishes to life. Knowing how to use it is the fundamental to making food delicious. In this chapter, we're talking about what salts you need, how to get to know your salt, and how to use them. It is the thing that makes everything taste good. And the reason is not because it makes everything taste like salt. You know, if that's the case, it's too much salt. But when salt is applied correctly, it brings out all of the other flavors of whatever dish you are creating. In my kitchen, I always have two main salts right next to my stove, my seasoning salt and my finishing salt. If I was gonna compare the two, my seasoning salt is my workhorse. It's the thing I use every day. And finishing salt is like the jazz hands of the salt family. These salts that I have here would all fit in the category of that like base seasoning salt. Sea salts, kosher salts, an iodized table salt. To figure out which one I liked best, kind of look at them. Here is a coarse sea salt compared to a fine sea salt. So the texture is a little bit different. And if I taste them, you'll notice when you try them compared to other ones that some of them are more salty than others. And they both have a pretty strong, pretty forward salt flavor. The coarse one, a little bit less so. Maybe that's just because the finer granules like coat your tongue a little bit more on the fine sea salt. And I've got some iodized table salt. Oh man, okay. The iodized table salt is like a sodium chloride, kind of punch to your face. This one clearly has more sodium for a volume measurement. Moving over here, I've got two different kosher salts. One is coarser and the other is a little bit finer. This one has more sodium per volume measurement. The diamond crystal one is on the lower end of the amount of sodium. When I'm selecting my salt for my seasoning salt, I want the most room for error. I also want to be able to see the salt I'm putting down really well. So for me, that would definitely rule out table salt just because it's not only fine, it has a lot of sodium in it. I would be worried that I would be over salting my food if I used that. This one right here is my go-to because of the fact that it isn't very salty and you can see it really well, but you have to choose your salt. Everybody has their preference. And once you start using a particular salt, you'll notice that you'll get more and more comfortable with whichever salt you've chosen and the level of seasoning that it brings. I have a few examples of some finishing salts over here. This one, which comes from the Basque Country in Spain, actually is a type of a fleur de sel example. And then here is Maldon salt, very popular kind of common finishing salt. And this one over here is smoked. As you can tell, like the first clear difference between the finishing salt and seasoning salts is they just look prettier. First of all, there's been more care and time put into how the crystals are formed. The other thing to note about a finishing salt is we're bringing salt texture into the dish. With the seasoning salts, I just want them to disappear. But with the finishing salt, when you sprinkle this on a little bit of, some roasted chicken or sliced steak or something, and you take that bite and you get this little pop of salt crystal, it is like fireworks going off inside of your mouth. Now that you've chosen your seasoning salt, I'm gonna show you how to use it. Right here, I have a cut of pork, and I will season large cuts of meat, anywhere from 1 to 3 days ahead of time. I also sometimes, season it right before I'm gonna cook it, but certainly if I'm talking about vegetables or seafood, I'm gonna season those items closer to when I'm gonna cook them. You wanna get an even spread of your salt when you go to season. In order to do that, it is all about height and then how you move your fingers. And you wanna be, at least 10 inches above. I mean, I'm more like a foot. Moving my fingers around so that I evenly coat. It's important to get all sides of whatever it is that you're seasoning. If I'm just seasoning with salt, I'll have my left hand be the hand that does the flipping, and then my right hand would season them all. There is muscle memory to salting, right? Over time, you grab the same amount of salt to season the same things. You just start to learn that. And it's a lot easier to know than to, grind salt or shake it out of a salt shaker. It's just important for you to find the salt that you love and then get really comfortable using it. It will, without a doubt, make your food more magical.